In 1929, America watched the markets collapse. But what most people don't realize is that the warning signs were flashing long before the crash began. The same thing happened in 2008. The signs were obvious, the imbalances were massive, but people ignored them because everything still felt normal, right up until it didn't. Today, in 2025, we're living through something far more dangerous than 1929 or 2008. Not because the crashes were small, but because this time, every weakness in the financial system is aligned at the exact same moment. Stocks, real estate, bonds, debt, interest rates, government spending, global instability. Every single pillar of the economy is cracking at the same time. And when all pillars collapse together, the entire structure falls in a way that no one alive today has ever seen. People assume 2025 will simply be another recession, a correction, a slowdown, something we've seen before. But what if I told you this isn't another cycle? What if we're living through something structurally unavoidable, mathematically guaranteed? Because the same indicators that predicted every major crash for the last 100 years are all flashing red at the same time. This isn't fear, this isn't speculation, this is data. And the numbers say we are entering a collapse that will be worse than 1929 and 2008 combined. Start with stocks. The S&P 500 trades at valuations that have only been seen twice in history. Right before the Great Depression and right before the dot-com collapse. But what makes 2025 different is the concentration. In 1929, a handful of industrial stocks held up the entire market. Today, 7 companies, Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Amazon, Google, Meta, and Tesla, represent almost 1/3 of the entire US stock market. If even one of these companies disappoints, the entire market falls. Nvidia trades at over 65 times earnings and is valued higher than the entire stock market of Germany. That isn't investing, that's speculation powered by AI hype. It's the same pattern investors followed in 1999, when people believed the internet would reshape the future, and it did. But the stock still collapsed 78% before the future arrived. Today, investors believe AI will change everything, and they're right. But they are catastrophically wrong on the timing, just like they were in 1999. Markets don't price long-term value, they price emotions. And right now, the emotion driving markets is pure mania. Real estate is even worse. People assume the 2008 bubble was the worst in history. They're wrong. Today's housing market is 50% overvalued relative to income and rent. In 2008, it was 35%. That means the current bubble is 43% bigger than the bubble that nearly destroyed the global financial system. But unlike 2008, today's crisis isn't just residential. Commercial real estate is collapsing in slow motion. Office buildings across major cities are half empty. Companies aren't coming back. Remote work isn't reversing. Mortgages taken out when rates were 3% now have to be refinanced at 7 to 9%. The math doesn't work. The value isn't there. Property owners are defaulting, one by one, handing the keys back to lenders. And those lenders are regional banks. The same regional banks that already showed signs of failure in 2023 and 2024. Silicon Valley Bank, First Republic, Signature, New York Community Bank, they collapsed even before the recession arrived. Imagine what happens when the defaults truly begin. And then there's the bond market, the one place investors used to hide during crashes. In 1929, bonds protected people. In 2008, bonds protected people. In 2025, bonds are collapsing because the US government is drowning in over $36 trillion of debt. Interest payments alone exceed $1.2 trillion per year. More than defense, more than social security, more than any other category. The government can only choose between 3 options: cut spending drastically and cause a recession, raise taxes drastically and cause a recession, or print money and cause inflation. Every option leads to crisis. There is no painless choice. And this is exactly why bonds are falling at the same time stocks are overvalued, at the same time real estate is collapsing. This has never happened before, not in US financial history. But the most alarming part? In 1929, only 10% of Americans owned stocks. In 2025, it's nearly 60%. That means this time, everyone gets hit immediately. Retirement accounts, 401ks, IRAs, college savings, everything. And unlike 2008, recovery won't be fast because the tools we used to save the economy last time no longer exist. In 2008, interest rates were 5.25%. The Fed cut them to zero. They printed trillions. They bailed out banks. They stabilized the system. In 2025, rates are already low. The Fed already printed trillions, and the government already used its bailout capacity. Those tools are gone. The safety net is gone. The buffer is gone. What comes next is what happens when markets realize there is no one left to save them. The parallels to 1929 and 2008 aren't similar. They're identical. Extreme valuations, excessive leverage, record debt, insiders selling at the top, retail investors gambling with margin, options and credit cards, concentration in a small group of stocks, blind belief that new technology makes old rules obsolete, and a Federal Reserve that has lost the ability to act. But there is one critical difference between past crashes and what we face now. In past crashes, one bubble popped. In 1929, it was stocks. In 2008, it was housing. In 2025, it's everything at once. Stocks, housing, bonds, government debt, consumer debt, corporate debt, commercial real estate. Every bubble inflated at the same time because of the same cause. 15 years of artificially cheap money. Cheap money creates fake growth. Fake growth creates bubbles, and bubbles always pop. The chain reaction will start with a single trigger. It could be Nvidia missing earnings. It could be a tech giant giving weak guidance. It could be a regional bank failing. It could be a geopolitical shock. It doesn't matter what the trigger is, because the system is so fragile that any shock will start the collapse. When the Magnificent Seven fall, the indexes fall. When the indexes fall, margin calls hit. When margin calls hit, forced selling begins. When forced selling begins, institutional stop-loss systems auto-sell trillions in assets. When stocks fall, bonds fall, because the government must borrow even more. When bonds fall, interest rates rise. When interest rates rise, real estate collapses faster. When real estate collapses, banks fail. When banks fail, deposits evaporate. When deposits evaporate, the government prints money. And when the government prints money, inflation destroys the currency. This is a doom loop. Once it begins, there is no easy way to stop it. Unemployment will follow. Companies that relied on cheap borrowing will cut staff. Tech companies will cut tens of thousands. Small businesses will collapse. Consumer spending will drop. And once unemployment starts rising, it accelerates. The SAM rule has predicted every recession since the 1970s with no false signals. It triggered already. The recession isn't coming, it's here. The average American will feel the impact in ways that are deeper and longer lasting than anything they've experienced. Retirement accounts cut in half or worse, housing values collapsing, job losses spreading across industries, credit tightening, prices rising again as the government prints money to bail out banks and cover deposits. A generation of young people entering the workforce with no opportunities, small businesses wiped out, families selling homes at losses because they can't afford mortgage payments, people delaying retirement, people coming out of retirement, people losing savings they spent decades building. The psychological damage will be enormous. In 2008, recovery took 5 years. In 1929, recovery took 25 years. In Japan, recovery took 34 years. There is no guarantee the US recovers quickly this time. The scale of the imbalances suggests the recovery could be long, slow, and painful. The political consequences will be even worse. Economic collapse always creates political instability. People look for someone to blame. They look for extreme solutions. They lose trust in institutions. They become vulnerable to manipulation. And history shows that economic desperation is the breeding ground for political chaos. But this doesn't have to be the end of the story. Crashes create opportunities. Crashes reset valuations. Crashes transfer wealth from the unprepared to the prepared. The people who panic lose everything. The people who understand the cycle rebuild everything. The biggest fortunes in history were made in 1929, in 2008, and they will be made again in 2025 and 2026. But only by those who see what's happening before the collapse, not after. The signs are here. The data is here. History is repeating itself frame by frame, and the window is closing.